Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. It's wonderful to see all of you this morning. Welcome to Open Circle, whether you are here in person with us or joining us online. Really grateful for the opportunity to spend this morning with you. My name is Matt Laidlaw. I serve as the director and lead teacher of our community. I just have been reflecting on this a lot the past week, especially how grateful I am for the opportunity for us to be back together in person. We're in a different space. We're trying some different things. The whole world is different since we were meeting together in person previously. But I really can't imagine this experience over the past several months just feeling more nurturing and positive than it has. In part because of the way everybody has chipped in and helped to make it happen, the open-mindedness that everybody has approached this return to in-person gatherings with, and the ways in which we've respected each other, recognizing that we're all figuring life out very differently right now. So thank you for the ways that you've helped make these gatherings possible, whether you're here in this room, whether you're here for the first time, or whether you're joining us online. I'm really, really grateful for that. A couple of usual reminders. First is, regardless of how old you are or whatever age you act, we want this space to feel at home for you. So the movements and the wiggles and the noises and the abrupt dropping of Matchbox cars or boxes of colored pencils that roll all the way down the floor, whatever. Like, we're a community, we're in this together, and this space belongs to all of us. So respect one another. Respect the people who brought you here, if you're young, but please make yourself at home, and parents, take a deep breath. We want your family to feel at home here. And then next, over the past few years, I've probably thought a lot about, like, why did I go to seminary? Was this a good decision? Is it helping me? I'm definitely still paying for it, emotionally and financially every month. But recently, I've realized that, hey, I didn't go to seminary just to, correct people's perceptions about God. I can also correct people's pronunciations of the different COVID variants. So, repeat after me. Omicron. Omicron. Not Omicron. It's not Omicron. Omicron, okay? Look, I feel so much better right now. When I send in that electronic payment for my student loan in a few weeks, I will feel like it was so much more worth it. I don't mean to make light of something that's very serious, but please continue to wear masks. We're grateful for the ways that you've been adhering to the guidelines and respecting one another. Everyone 2 years old and over, we're asking to wear masks. That has proven to be incredibly grateful. When we have had people, it's proven to be incredibly helpful when we have had positive tests shortly after our gatherings, because we can say in this space or in this childcare room, people were wearing masks the entire time, which means we can handle things a little bit differently together. And our team's going to continue to monitor the situation, doing our best to make sure we're being as safe as possible. So thank you for being safe and respecting one another and honoring these guidelines. And also, thank you for saying Omicron moving forward. This morning, in a few moments, our friend Lex Cummings and our new friend Jeremy Verwys are going to be guiding us through a guided meditation and practice together. Abby Black will be sharing our story for all ages, and then I will be offering a brief teaching on peace and the season that we're in right now. So I think it'll be a fun morning together. I'm excited for us to try some new things. But with that, if you're willing and you're able, please stand up, and in whatever way feels safe and respectful for you, greet the people around you. Say hello. Say hi to some new faces, some familiar ones. Introduce yourself. Welcome people this morning. All right, friends. We will have some more time to connect with one another in just a bit. Thank you for that warm welcome. This morning, instead of beginning with what has become known as our opening practice and experiencing music separately, we're going to have an extended practice and meditation guided by Lex Cummings, who will be joined by our guest musician, Jeremy Verwys. So we all know Lex by now, but Lex serves on our board of directors. She's our curator of programs and practices for all ages, and I am becoming more and more convinced that there is nothing that this human cannot do and isn't excellent at. So Lex will be guiding us through our meditation. And Jeremy Verwys, I'm a fan of fancy bios and good bios, so I'm just going to read it. He's a West Michigan musician, instructor, and board-certified music therapist. Jeremy divides his time performing, teaching, and instructing music at Cornerstone University and Grand Rapids Community College, as well as keeping a private studio in Grand Rapids, Michigan. He's also the owner of West Michigan Music Therapy, LLC. So please join me in welcoming Lex Cummings and Jeremy Verwys.
Can do all things except my laundry, so I do have limits. Good morning, everyone. It is so exciting to be here with you all, and as Matt said, we are going to be doing a peace practice today. Peace is one of the 4 themes of Advent, and peace can be super elusive and frustrating, to use a G-rated word. And as Matt already said, we know that there are kids and families here, so just make this practice your own. There will be noise. That's the point. So, as I was thinking about peace, I was thinking we could all use more peace. Inner peace, outer peace, communal peace, world peace. But peace can feel so elusive, right? What is peace in turmoil? What is peace in confusion? What about peace in pain? Peace in waiting? Peace in injustice? And let's be clear, not peace because we get good at ignoring. Not peace because we sweep things under the rug. Not peace because we've gotten good at numbing. And not peace just because we beat back our opposition. But peace because even though the world is a tempest, your roots go deep. You know who you are, you know what you love, and you know what loves you. Peace because you balance the ability to hold people gently and hold justice firmly. So today's practice, we've got music playing, and you are going to get a chance to reflect on some prompts and interact with some foil. So in just a moment, I'm going to invite you to come get a piece of foil. There's stations in the back and stations here in the front. And try to keep your piece of foil as peaceful as possible. Try not to bend it. Try not to wrinkle it. Try not to make noise with it. Do everything you can to find peace with your piece of foil. And when you get back to your seat, I invite you to think about these questions. When you hear the word peace, what do you think? What do you feel? And when peace is just about focusing on not causing bends, folds, noise, it's hard to be present in the moment. So with your foil, where is your focus? And with that, I invite you to get your foil and reflect on these questions. Now, if keeping peace or making peace is like not bending the foil, it can be really easy to start to confuse peace with just avoidance of conflict or numbness or not showing up to your own life, but instead just balancing and keeping everything so tight. But also, sometimes we can try to find peace with force. So this next time, as you enjoy this music, crumple your foil into a ball. Not yet, and not too tight, because you're gonna wanna do something with it later. So crumple it into a ball and just hold it in your hands. And I invite you to reflect on these questions. When is it most difficult for you to make peace? Do you ever try to force peace, or have you tried to get peace by anger, fight, or control? And then here's a question to ask yourself. Do you tend to try to keep peace by ignoring, running, hiding, or smoothing over? Or do you tend to keep peace by swinging a sword and ensuring everything bends to your force? Take a moment, crumple your foil, and reflect. So we can try to make no waves, or we can try to force and conquer and control and form. Maybe we show up different in different situations, to different people, to different places. This next time I invite you to, not quite yet, but smooth your foil back out. Do your best not to rip it, but do your best to work it to get it as smooth as it can. And as you're doing that, reflect on this. Notice if you're more tentative and you're having a hard time unwrapping your foil because you're too afraid of it ripping. Or notice if you're forceful and having a hard time just not tearing it to shreds. Be present to the feelings in your fingertips. Feel the texture. Remember that peace is not a void of texture and tension. And when you think about your upcoming week, where is one place you may be invited to make peace? How will that include your gentleness and your firm presence? And notice any tendencies within you to either avoid or control. So now I invite you to smooth your foil back out. So just like you've interacted with your tinfoil piece, making peace requires presence and gentleness and tension and force. And when I think about Advent, this season that we're in, it's our time to acknowledge that this whole life thing is hard. Finding the balance is really difficult. And life can feel clunky and frustrating and like we're fighting ourselves and each other. And yet, Advent season is a preparation for the birth of Jesus, who showed us how to live in this peacemaking tension, who never shied away, but who never used violence, who was present to each person and present in every moment. And we get to know, we get to be invited into the idea that we have exactly what we need in this moment. And we also get to think we hold the light that we have with the peace that we have. Knowing that it's enough as it is, and we always have the invitation for more. We are enough, and we're always invited to more. And peace can be such a foundation to invite more light into our lives. So this last time that music is playing, I invite you to come up and put your foil here between these two baskets of candles and light a candle on your foil. And then once you return to your seat, ask yourself, in this season, what are you waiting for? And how can making peace be a practice that grounds your waiting? So feel free to come forward and light a candle on your foil. This week, my invitation to you as you think about the situations that you would like to invite more peacemaking is just notice. Notice your force, notice your avoidance, notice your fear, notice your hesitations, notice your resistance. Because each time you notice is the work of you being more present to this exact moment, to the people that you're with, to yourself. It's essentially the work of you smoothing out your foil to lay a foundation for more light in your life. Amen.
usually have one mask-related wardrobe malfunction each Sunday, so I'll take care of this in a second. Lex and Jeremy, thank you so much. It's beautiful. Thank you, thank you. At Open Circle, we share stories for all ages, stories for both the young and the young at heart. And this morning, our story will be shared by our friend, Abby Black. So I want to invite you, whether you are young or young at heart, or however you would identify yourself in those categories, to come forward if you want to join us on stage for the story. You can come over here, you can just scale the stage, or you can feel free to use those stairs right there.
It's a good one. Adults, you should join too. So come on up and find a comfy seat up here so you can see the story really well and hear the story really well. Cool. Awesome. I'll wait for you. Thank you. So I'm going to hit the singing bowl so we can practice getting quiet in our bodies and ready to listen with our ears and with our hearts, okay? The book we're reading today is called Nothing in Common, and it's by Kate Holfer and Karina Lukin. It's one of my favorite books I've read in the last year. They had nothing in common, so they never waved. Except every day they loved watching the old man with his dog. The dog could do marvelous things, and he did. Things they felt under the floors of their heart. But other than that, they had nothing in common. Still, they were the only ones who noticed when one day was different. Neither had ever seen an old man cry or heard a name called so sadly it flies through your window and lands on your chest. It happened just to them. When morning came, they both went out with binoculars and a helmet for thinking, because a marvelous dog could be anywhere, doing anything, and a marvelous friend is hard to find. They both knew that. They looked at the same quiet rooftops and under the same whale and near the same planets, and they thought of the same old man crying. But other than that, they had nothing in common. That day when the hot air balloon floated over the city, they were the only ones who thought a dog might be flying it, a marvelous dog who was lost and looking for his friend far and wide. It could happen. Only they knew that. Is it true? It was a big way for a dog to look for someone, and a big thing for just the two of them to notice. But dogs aren't birds. They can't see their way home from the sky, especially a dog without binoculars. And a balloon is a great moon with ropes. You need another person with a helmet, someone who knows exactly where a balloon dog wants to go, someone marvelous like that. It was a slow walk, one with time to notice things they hadn't noticed before, tall things, how patient a dog in the sky is, how they both had the same feeling inside, a deep feeling that ballooned out. They pulled and pulled, and they knew the same way back because they knew the same stars and the same earth and the same quiet rooftops they saw every night from their windows. And because they noticed the same old man every day, just the two of them, An old man who cried, this time because he was happy. Because the dog could do marvelous things, and did, each thought the other was marvelous too, even though they'd had nothing in common. Nothing. And that's something. The end. Thank you for being good listeners. Anyone with the orange bracelet can follow me, and a blue bracelet can follow me. I'm going to head on down this aisle so I can grab my stuff, and Miss Lex, you can follow her too. Thank you. I need my mask.
Thank you, Abby. Such a beautiful story. It's such a gift when you share with us on Sunday mornings. So in a moment, we're going to practice what has become known as standing circles. This is a completely optional practice. You do not need to participate. If you're not feeling up for it this morning or not interested, you can indicate that you don't want to participate by just remaining seated in just a moment, or you can feel free to go for a walk around the building. We'll practice this for about 8 minutes or so. So if you're willing and able and you'd like to participate, please stand up where you are. And in just a moment, I'm going to ask us to get in groups of 3 or 4 people together. I'm going to offer 3 prompts that each of you will have an opportunity to respond to. Everyone will respond to the first prompt, then everyone to the second prompt, then everyone to the third prompt. And the only thing you need to know about stepping into this conversation is the sort of intentions that we invite all of us to participate with, which is the first is to speak from the heart, the second to listen from the heart. Without saying too much, say just enough. Respect one another and trust the process. So if you'd like to participate, I want to invite you to get in groups of 3 or 4 people, ideally people maybe you didn't come here with, people that you don't know, and be inclusive of everyone, regardless of their age, in this space who might like to participate. So get in groups of 3 or 4, and then I will, once you're in your groups, look up at me, and then I will give us our prompts. So standing circles, ready, set, go, find one another. Okay. Okay. All right. It looks like we have found one another. So our prompts for this morning, please share your name and what animal you woke up as this morning. Don't overthink it, okay? Second, briefly describe a moment of peace or a moment of conflict that you experienced over the holiday weekend. Briefly. And then complete this phrase. My relationship with peace is blank. Once you've completed your conversation together in this practice, you can signify that by sitting down, and in about 6 or 7 minutes or so, I'll invite us back together as a group. So thanks, everybody. We're going to take about 2 more minutes, so make sure you've had a chance to hear from everybody. About 2 more minutes. About 30 more seconds. 30 more seconds. All right, friends, as you're able, you can find your way back to your seat. Thank you for being willing to participate and to lend your presence to this practice and to one another. I'm not sure if there's anything that I've been more desperate for this past year than peace. When I look at these pictures, I feel it all. I'm tired and sad and mad. I could cry, scream. They make me want to work harder, and they make me want to give up all at the same time. And any one of us sitting here knows which pictures, we could have shown hundreds, if not thousands more, that mark what feels just like conflict, violence, sadness, trauma of this past year. I just want it to stop. When I talk with other people, friends, family, members of this community, it doesn't take long for most of our conversations to start to churn up a similar sense of longing that seems to be rooted in exhaustion and exasperation from the hostility that just feels so real at every level of life. This longing for peace with ourselves, our own minds, our own hearts, our own souls, our own bodies, peace with our own fears, our own worry, our insecurities, peace with others, the straining of relationships that just feels like it has intensified exponentially over the past few months and years. And of course, peace in this world that at times can literally feel like it's burning down, because it actually is. And the violence and conflict that has just led to so much despair in so many communities around the world. Peace. If there's a thing behind the thing behind the thing behind the thing of all the things we want and need, I think it might be that. And it's maybe the thing we've always wanted and needed the most, whether we've been able to articulate it or not. The Jewish and Christian sacred texts, the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament, speak to this longing, and what are likely familiar passages for many of us. The Hebrew prophet Isaiah, in chapter 9, verse 6, talks about the Prince of Peace. And at the time, this was ascribed to the God of the universe, the mystery of God, whatever and whoever that is. This God is the Prince of Peace. And centuries later, the first Christians reinterpreted this passage and said, this is about Jesus. Whoever Jesus was and is and will be, somehow, it's connected to peace. The psalmist David in the Hebrew Bible says, turn from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. This passage is one of the reasons why I love the Bible, not necessarily because of this text, but because the heading of this psalm says, this is a psalm of David when he pretended to be insane before Abimelech, who drove him away, and he left. Whatever that means. Turn from evil, do good, seek peace, and pursue it. Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew, in the Sermon on the Mount, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And the Apostle Paul, in the book of Romans, chapter 12, verse 18, in whatever ways that you're able, in whatever ways it's up to you, live at peace with everyone. And here we are, the season of Advent, where in the Christian tradition we direct this longing for peace, this longing for just a break from the violence, in the conflict, in the hostility. Here we are in this season where we're supposed to be directing that longing for peace towards Jesus, who, as the story goes, 2,000 years ago, entered into this world. We've been directing this longing for peace at Jesus for 2,000 years. And for centuries before that, towards God, the mystery of the universe, as the Prince of Peace. But here we are 2,000 years later, still longing, still lighting candles, still exhausted and exasperated, still desperate from a break from all of the stuff that those pictures symbolize for each of us. Are the people who claim to speak and live for Jesus spreading peace? Are we making peace? Are you and I seeking peace and pursuing it? Are we at peace with one another? It often doesn't feel like it. I think that's why the room got so quiet when I started showing some of those pictures. But I don't think it's for lack of wanting. I think we just don't know how to do peace, how to have peace, how to make peace, all of it. Which is what I want to talk about for a few minutes this morning. But I want to offer a couple of qualifications first. I recognize that for many of us, either the traditions we came from or that we still find ourselves in, that there's this assumption or belief that when it comes to our longing for peace, it's going to come from somewhere else. God's going to do it for us someday. And I'm going to pray, and I'm going to be faithful, and I'm going to light candles. And I understand that, and I think it's beautiful. I also want to name that I don't think that's the only space we have to be when it comes to faith and spirituality and trust and faithfulness. I think that, and I'm speaking just for me when I say this, that if God exists, anything that God has done or is doing or will do isn't separate from anything that we've done, are doing, or will do. I don't believe that peace is in the hands of God, whatever that means. So let's light peace candles, but also let's be peace candles. I don't think we can separate those things. I can't separate those things anymore. And as we talk about peace, the second qualification I want to offer is one of the clever tricks you learn in seminary, beyond how to pronounce COVID variants using the Greek alphabet, is to frame a problem in a certain way so that when you offer a solution, it fits together really nicely. And in that way, it just sort of perpetuates this thing that the pastor or the preacher is like Bible answer man, has all the answers. Bring your problems here. We can fix it for you. I've got it all figured out. I'm exhausted by that because I don't think it's real or true or even helpful. And even though I know I do that sometimes, I'm working very hard not to be that clever rhetorically. I want to talk about peace. I want to talk about some of the problems I think we have and how we frame it. And I want to push us to maybe think about it in some other ways. But I want to name that it's really complex, and it's really messy, and I only know what I'm talking about in part, and for sure I'm full of it on some level. Most of you know that better than I do. So I offer this really, really humbly. Not as we haven't figured this out in 2,000 years, but now we have, thanks for coming to Open Circle. But as what if? What about? Maybe a few invitations towards this together. The word peace in the New Testament is most often translated from the Greek word eirene. Let's say eirene together. Eirene. This word is most often used to mean in the New Testament and in other Greek literature to mean literally the lack of war, the lack of violence, the lack of discord, the lack of conflict. So when it comes to eirene, peace, this is what you have when you don't have war. Eirene is what you have when you don't have violence. Eirene is what you have when you don't have conflict. Eirene is what you have when you don't have discord. And this is important because not having violence is a really good thing. Not having conflict is a really good thing. We need more eirene in the world. We need more lack of violence in the world. This understanding of the word peace informs how we think about peacekeeping. There's a lot of ways you can approach peacekeeping. I think, again, an overly simplistic way of talking about it is peacekeeping in terms of eirene is doing everything we can to make sure we don't have violence. Doing everything we can to make sure we don't have conflict, war, or discord. This is eirene. This is the absence of war. This is peacekeeping. Now, this is the word that is put into Jesus' mouth in the literature of the New Testament, this Greek word. And while it's true that just about everything we know about Jesus and the New Testament writers comes from what's written in Greek, the Greek language doesn't really capture the intent or the meaning of the word. Jesus didn't speak Greek. The first disciples likely didn't speak Greek. They were familiar with Hebrew and Aramaic. They were quoting, paraphrasing, reinterpreting the Hebrew Bible with everything they did. So it's often really helpful to try and understand, okay, this is the word we have, but based on the culture they came from, what word were they talking about, or at least what meaning and intent did they have when they said these things? The Greek word for peace is eirene. The Hebrew word is the word shalom. Say shalom. We're familiar with this word. If you go to Israel, shalom is also just like a greeting. It's like when you say hello to people, you say shalom. But shalom is much more than the absence of war, the absence of violence, the absence of discord, the absence of conflict. Shalom is wholeness. Shalom is completeness. Shalom is rest. Shalom is safety, soundness, tranquility, prosperity, harmony, integration, cooperation, collaboration, justice. Hebrew is what you could call a poor language, meaning there's not a lot of words, which means the words have to carry a lot of weight. It doesn't mean that words can mean different things, it just means a word means a lot of things. Eirene is the absence of something. Shalom is the fullness of something else. Eirene is the absence of something. This kind of peace is just not war. Shalom is the fullness of something else. This kind of peace is wholeness, is completeness, is rest, is safety. This understanding of the word peace is about much more than peacekeeping. This understanding of the word peace is connected to peacemaking. Not just keeping something from war, violence, or conflict, but making wholeness, making completeness, making harmony, making rest, making justice. The opposite of peace isn't war. The opposite of peace is brokenness, incompleteness, disharmony, exhaustion, competition, injustice. Can you feel the difference between these two words? So when we say something like, Jesus is the Prince of Peace, or blessed are those who make peace, it's much more than Jesus is the Prince of the absence of conflict. It's Jesus is the Prince of wholeness. Or, blessed are those who make not conflict. Blessed are those who make justice. Blessed are those who make cooperation. I don't know about you, but when I see these two words framed this way, they just fundamentally feel different to me. When I think about attaching them, even to some of the images we viewed just a few minutes ago, how these words intersect with those images feel fundamentally different to me. I wonder if, as we consider our own longing for peace, if we might consider that maybe we need a little less peacekeeping and a little more peacemaking in our lives and in our world. Maybe a little less irene and a little more shalom. Here's what I mean. Let's take a look at a tool that has become familiar to us, hopefully, over the past few weeks. This idea that when it comes to relationships and environments that are high on control, accountability, limit setting, and discipline, but low on love, encouragement, nurture, empathy, and support, we call those punitive. Low on accountability, low on love and support, neglectful. High on love and support, empathy, but low on accountability, discipline, limit setting, we call those permissive. And it's not that these things aren't at times needed or aren't at times effective at accomplishing an outcome. It's just that they're not necessarily transformative spaces. That transformation and restoration takes place in something we call a with space, where there is high control, where there is high limit setting, where there is high discipline and accountability, but there's also high love, encouragement, nurture, and support. When those two things are high in spaces, environments, relationships, that's where transformation and restoration happens. That's the sweet spot. Often when I think about peacekeeping, these three gray boxes become the metaphors for me. When I think about environments that are high on control, but maybe low on engagement, support, encouragement, love, nurture, empathy, I think of peacekeeping in the sense of like something that, at least from our space, we might see on the news in some other country across the world where there's like UN peacekeeping tanks or SUVs occupying a city. And guess what's happening there? Not violence in that moment, but peacekeeping is done to them in that space. That's not bad, right? It's not bad. It is. But this is how we can often keep peace by doing something to a relationship or an environment, crinkling up that ball of foil, taking control. And maybe conflict gets lower. Maybe we don't have war or violence in that moment. But we also recognize we are high on control in that space. Or maybe peacekeeping, not having war, not having violence, not having discord, looks like being very loving, very supportive, very empathetic, but also asking nothing of those that you're in a relationship with or the space that you're in. You're essentially allowing whatever to happen in order to keep the peace. You are being very permissive. Sometimes this is necessary. Sometimes this is needed. And then there's also the times where we're essentially not engaged. We're avoiding conflict. We're avoiding violence. We're avoiding war. We're doing everything we can to not have conflict by basically just being neglectful, by living in avoidance, by living in denial. All three of these things can be effective if what we're going for is irene. If we're going for a lack of war or conflict or discord, then all three of these things are effective, and sometimes they're needed. Sometimes they can save lives. They can save your own life or your own soul. They're not necessarily bad, but they are irene. They are a kind of peace that just comes from a lack of conflict, and they aren't necessarily transformative. It can protect us from immediate harm, but it often will perpetuate the status quo. It may not actually change anything about the circumstances we're in. And often this way of peacemaking just preserves the best version of how things are. But I don't think this way of peacekeeping is necessarily transformative or restorative. Because I think if we want to make peace, if we want to make shalom, if we want wholeness, if we want completeness, if we want a peace that's not just the absence of conflict in war, we can't be in control, we can't just be permissive, and we can't neglect. We have to engage one another. Like, actually engage one another. And do it with love, and do it with accountability. Do it with empathy, but also do it with expectations. Which means that peacemaking is really, really messy. Peacemaking, I'll just be vulnerable here. Here's mine. I didn't do very well at the practice or the exercise in terms of unfolding it, but this actually feels really true for me. What did I want to do? Not really do what Lex was asking me to do to keep the foil nice. Stay in control of it and hold it really tight. Instead, I did the practice. I engaged. This doesn't look like the same piece of foil that I was handed. It's really, really messy. This is why most of us prefer Irene over shalom, because shalom asks so much more of us and those that we're in relationship with. It's much easier to try and peace keep than to peace make. It's much easier to live in a world of Irene than in a world of shalom. Cool story, Matt. What do you want us to do with all this? Omicron, Irene, shalom, whatever. Where does this plane land? All right, let's start heading for the runway. Let's start with you and me. When it comes to the relationships in your life, Irene or shalom? Are you peacekeeping or are you peacemaking? Friendships, family members, coworkers. Do you have not conflict or do you have wholeness? When it comes to your relationship with your spouse, your partner, you peacekeeping? You peacemaking? It's good to not have war. It's good to not have violence. It's good to not have conflict. But in these relationships, while you may not have conflict, you also may not have intimacy or vulnerability or collaboration or the justice that can come with peacemaking. For me, the question is, am I willing to risk losing Irene in order to gain shalom? Because peacemaking is often a threat to peacekeeping, right? Just keep the foil nice and tidy. No, we might have to crumple it up together if we have any hope for wholeness, for completeness. Are we willing to risk conflict in order to gain wholeness and completeness and justice? Paul says, do everything you can to live in shalom with one another. I'm not sure I am. And I want to ask you if you are. And I wonder if that's not the question for this next season. And then finally, we talked about you and me. Let's talk about us. Like the big us, not just this little community, but like the entire cosmos, okay? Peacekeeping can protect us from the harm that comes from conflict and war and violence. But peacemaking often perpetuates unjust and unhealthy relationships and unjust and unhealthy systems. It can protect us, but it's not transformative. Peacekeeping often maintains a status quo that works for some, but marginalizes and oppresses others. To press on that a little more, I might say, peacekeeping can protect us, but it's also often the tool of the oppressor. Peacemaking is an opportunity to transform the system by which oppressors and the oppressed exist in the first place. What if instead of saying, how do we not have conflict, we start saying, how do we create a world where these sort of problems might not even exist in the first place? I don't think we need more people peacekeeping in this world. I think we need more people who want to imagine and work toward an entirely different world. A world where we're not trying to manage problems, but a world where we're willing to engage one another face to face, eye to eye, with honesty, accountability, but also love and empathy to say, how can we create a world together where there is shalom and these sorts of conflicts may not even exist in the first place? How do we reimagine a completely different system, a completely different way of engaging with one another? And for me, I can't help but wonder if grasping the difference between these two realities is why the deepest longings of the human hearts, of each of our hearts, has remained unfulfilled for so long. I can't help but wonder if at least considering these different ways of holding peace might be the most gentle and subtle invitation for a different way of stepping forward into this world might look like. A different way of imagining the possibility of a more loving world for me, for you, for all of us together. If you're willing and you're able, please stand up. A couple of brief reminders before we close our gathering together. Last time we met in person, I gave a brief financial update and just named that our story is unlikely. The generosity of this community is unbelievable. Financial contributions have remained steady throughout the pandemic, but the cost to continue to prepare for the future, to re-engage in-person gatherings, finding a new venue, where that leaves us for the end of 2020 is what we're projecting is around a $15,000 shortfall. So we do have a small cash reserve. This isn't an emergency, but also not spending from the cash reserve means we can keep going with as much stability, imagination, and possibility in how we want to engage our future together. So we want to try and raise $15,000 between now and the end of December. So we launched a small campaign on this past Tuesday. In the past 5 days, we've already raised just under $3,500, which is amazing. Thank you to everybody who gives financially to make these gatherings happen, to give towards our mission. We're incredibly grateful. Whether you already give or you've never given, whether it's $5 or $50 or $500, whatever it is, every little bit helps. And this will be an important part of how we continue to engage our future together. So you can give. There's a cash box on the table just outside these doors in the exhibit hall, opencirclecommunity.org. There's a link at the top of the banner, the year-end giving. If you have any questions, please find me afterwards. Happy to answer any questions you might have about the community. But thank you for the generosity you have continued to show throughout our story together. And then next, we've already delivered 4 large bags of items to Dégagé over the past several weeks. All of those items have been put to immediate use, like there's people in the shower who don't have soap right now. We brought soap. That got brought up to the 3rd floor so those people showering had soap. It's amazing, okay? So thank you for your donations. There's a list in the hallway in the exhibit hall. If you'd like to make a contribution, we're just going to keep doing it every single week. Whatever you all bring, we will make sure gets to Dégagé. We're meeting next week. Lex will be guiding us through another practice. Jordan Gilliam will be our guest musician collaborating with Lex. And then I will be teaching on the word hope. Our Christmas gathering for all ages, December 21st at 7 p.m. That's a Tuesday night, okay? Tuesday night in this space, the darkest night of the year. We are going to be a little rowdy. We're going to be a little reverent. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to explore the meaning of darkness and light and celebrate the holidays together. That will be an all-ages gathering, no childcare. hence the rowdiness, which will be fantastic. Lex would like to, if you are in middle school or high school, or you are the parent of a middle schooler or high schooler, and you would like to talk with Lex about youth group in general, or what it could be for our community at all, or if you've just never met Lex, you should go talk to Lex after the gathering. She would like to talk with you. And then we sent out a couple important emails this week, our December updates, then the year-end campaign email. Please take a look at those. If you didn't get that email, go to opencirclecommunity.org, give us your name and email address on the Get Connected section right on the homepage. We promise we won't over-email you. You'll hear from us about once a month with important updates about what's going on in our community. Pick up your kids before you get coffee, per usual. Don't forget that. And thanks to everybody who contributed some treats and cookies this morning. And then in about 20 minutes, we're going to start cleaning up. So if you're here and you're willing to carry a few things down the hall and downstairs, we would be very, very grateful for that, as always. All right. If you're willing, maybe hold your hands in front of you and receive these words of blessing and benediction before we go. My Open Circle family, may God bless you and keep you. May the face of God shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the goodness of God always find you. And may you have peace. Peace be with you, my friends. Have a wonderful week.